It's 45 Colt Day, and it's time to take the Peacemaker to the range. As a bit of a recap, I recently bought this revolver. It's the EAA Big Bore Bounty Hunter in 45 Colt with the 4 3/4 inch barrel. I took it to the range and shot some factory 45 Colt and 45 Schofield, and I was not impressed with the groups that it gave me. I then measured the cylinder mouths up here and noticed that they were 0.4565 inches, which was larger than I had expected. I suspect this may be one of the causes of the poor grouping. So I ordered a full wad cutter and a semi-wad cutter mold from Arsenal Molds and had them cut so that they would drop bullets that were sized 0.457 inches. And I'm hoping that the oversized bullets will help somewhat with the grouping. In a recent video, I loaded the large bullets as well as several other bullets with different powder loads to test in here. And then I finished these grips and I changed the springs in here, which resulted in a somewhat lighter and better trigger. Well, I just headed to the range to see how this ammo and this revolver perform. In all, I shot, I think it was 230 rounds. I recorded some of that, but I've edited it down so you only have to watch some of the shooting. I have a clip here of about 3 minutes that I'll play. It's a split screen. One side of the screen is targets, and the other side will be some footage of the revolver being shot. I only have one camera, so the two don't coincide with each other. The targets will be labeled as to the ammo being used, and the ammo you'll see being shot from the revolver is the lighter loads with the E3 at a little under 700 feet per second. The targets I used are this target here. I took a minute or two the other day and was playing around on the computer, and I ended up with a target special designed for YouTubers, if you will. The way I have it printed here makes this outer circle a 7.5 inch circle. All of these shots are going to be from a rest at 10 yards. Now, a couple things to note real quick before we go over the results. This may sound like I'm trying to make excuses, but I'm not. I'm just trying to pass on a few things that I've learned. And the first is these sights. You have a small groove cut in the back here and a little metal black blade in the front. And as you can see, it does give you a sight picture, but it is not the greatest sight picture you've ever seen. And so, while it is certainly adequate to put shots on target, my aging eyes and these sights are not the perfect match. Another thing to note is that I use this rest. This may not be the best rest for this revolver. As you can see, the area here for the extractor sits on there kind of funny, and with that cutout, it kind of wants to fall in there. And so it works, but it's not the best solution probably for this particular revolver. Now, if you notice some of those targets, this did seem to tend to shoot towards the left a little bit. Maybe that's because I'm shooting a YouTuber target, I don't know, but I was curious if the rest had something to do with that maybe, so I shot one of the groups offhand, and it also shot to the left a little bit. And finally, the table that I was shooting from, that's the table I put the gel blocks on when I'm shooting my hollow point tests. And that table with this rest together were a little low for the chair that I was using. And so while it worked, I was kind of hunched over a little bit while shooting this. So I think next time I use that rest and that table setup, I will put something underneath the rest to raise it up a bit. Let's take a look at these targets and see how he did. Here is the target from the factory loaded 45 Colt round. Got all 10 shots on target here. The average velocity was 667 feet per second with an extreme spread of 53 and a standard deviation of 17. This 10 shot group is 4.1 inches. And looking in the video, I saw the first 5 and the last 5. The two 5-shot groups, if you will, were 2.7 inches and 3.7 inches. This was the factory-loaded 45 Schofield. This gave an average velocity of 731 feet per second with an extreme spread of 58 and a standard deviation of 15. One shot was a little bit off target over here, but all in all with that one, it was a 4.5 inch group. But if you look at the two 5-shot groups, the first one was 1.5 inches, which was outstanding, and the other one was a 3-inch group. This was the target for the 200 grain semi-wad cutter that Thorzak 777 had sent me. I shot most of those in my 1911, and they did just fine in that. But in this 45 Colt loaded with 8 grains of Unique, I had 9 shots on target, which is a 3.9 inch group, but there was one more shot over here that made it a 4.9 inch group. The first 5 was 3.3, and the last 5 was a 4.9 inch group, so that was almost a 5 inch group on that one. That had an average velocity of 873 feet per second, and the extreme spread on that one was 97 with a standard deviation of 27. And that one was not crimped into a crimping groove, it was crimped right over the shoulder. And I'm curious if that fairly soft bullet started to move in the case a little bit. I don't know if that's the case, but it certainly was not the top performer of the day. This was the Lee 200 grain tumble lube semi-wad cutter, also loaded with 8 grains of Unique. It averaged 845 feet per second with a spread of 78 and a standard deviation of 28. And it gave me a 2.8 inch group. The first 5 shots was 2.4 and the last 5 was 2.8. So that wasn't a perfect group or a great group, but it was better than the factory load. The Hornady XTP, which is a 225 grain bullet, had 9 shots that made it on paper. With the 10th shot that was off to the edge, it was a total of a 4-inch group. The first 5 shots was a 3.1 inch, and the last group was a 3-inch. But it gave me a really small standard deviation. The velocity was 890 feet per second, with a spread of 23 and a standard deviation of 7. My 225 grain MP bullet a bullet cast from the MP mold, which is this bullet here, sized down to .452 and loaded with 8 grains of unique, gave me a 2.8 inch group. The first 5 shots was 2.3 inches, and the second group of 5 was 1.8 inches. That had a velocity of 923 feet per second with a spread of 101 and a standard deviation of 26. And like that Thorzak's semi-wad cutter, I'm curious, without having a crimp groove and just kind of crimping over the front of the driving band, if that bullet started to shift a little bit, and that's why the spread was 101. Still, looking at some of these groups, 2.8 inches isn't horrible. Taking a look at the full wad cutter that was sized down to .452. 8 grains of unique gave me 840 feet per second with a spread of 89 and a standard deviation of 24. In all, that was a 2.4 inch group. The first group of 5 was 2.3 inches, and the second 5 shots was 1.8 inches. And that full wad cutter sure cuts a nice clean hole in the target. The semi-wad cutter, sized down to .452, gave me a velocity of 851 feet per second with 8 grains of unique. It had an extreme spread of 68 and a standard deviation of 20, and it gave a 4.4 inch group. The first 5 was 3.7 inches, and the last 5 was a 2.5 inch group. That's it for the bullets that were size .452. Now we're getting into the larger bullets, and this first one is the semi-wad cutter loaded with 4.5 grains of E3. It gave an average velocity of 676 feet per second with a spread of 32 and a standard deviation of 10, and it gave a 4.1 inch group. All 10 shots were on paper, barely, but since I didn't have this one on video, I don't know what the first 5 and the second group of 5 were. The full wad cutter with the same loading of 4.5 grains of E3 gave an average of 672 with a spread of 34 and a standard deviation of 12, so very similar. But the group was an inch smaller at 3.1 inches. And if it weren't for this guy up here, it's looking like that one wanted to start grouping a bit. Similar velocity with 6 grains of unique. This is the semi-wad cutter with 6 grains of unique. Average of 682 with a spread of 51 and a standard deviation of 17, and it was a 2.5 inch group. And then the full wad cutter with 6 grains of unique was 684 feet per second with a spread of 47 and a standard deviation of 16, and it was a 1.9 inch group, so less than 2 inches on this one. After that, I started the latter loads with the semi-wad cutter and full wad cutter with unique starting at 8 grains. This is 8 grains of unique with the semi-wad cutter, with an average of 876, spread of 37, a standard deviation of 12. And this was a 3 inch group as far as I can tell, but there's at least one bullet over here on the edge, so that 3 is probably actually a bit bigger. That 8 grains of unique with the full wad cutter also gave me a 3 inch group, but this is all 10 shots this time. It was a velocity of 869 with a spread of 61 and a standard deviation of 17. 8.2 grains of unique with the semi-wad cutter gave it an average of 893 with an extreme spread of 35 and a standard deviation of 11. This was a 2.8 inch group. And starting at 8.2 up to the top end, these were only 5-shot groups. And the 5-shot group with 8.2 grains of unique with the full wad cutter was one of the better groups of the day at 1.7 inches. May have something to do with the fact that I left the target upside down on that one. The average velocity for these was 884 feet per second with a spread of 22 and a standard deviation of 8. 8.4 grains with the semi-wad cutter was 916 feet per second with a spread of 16, standard deviation of 6. And a 1.9 inch group for these 4 shots. There's a 5th one out here somewhere. I don't know what the total group size was. But I got all 5 shots for 8.4 grains with the full wad cutter, and that came out to a 2 inch group. That was 913 feet per second with a spread of 22 and a standard deviation of 9. Moving up to 8.6 grains of unique with the semi-wad cutter, put it at 923 feet per second with a spread of 27, standard deviation of 11, and a 2.4 inch group. That 8.6 grains with the full wad cutter was 917 feet per second, a spread of 19, and a standard deviation of 6. This is a 1 inch or a 1.5 inch group. but it's only 4 shots. I don't know where the 5th went. I'm hoping it went through that same hole, but I'm guessing it disappeared somewhere, so I don't really know what that group size is. 8.8 grains with the semi-wad cutter gave 955 feet per second with a spread of 35, a standard deviation of 13, and a 2.1 inch group of these 3 or 4 shots. I don't know. The couple of these look like a second bullet might have gone through, but I certainly can't swear to it. I know at least 3 hit the target. And all 5 made it onto the target with the full wad cutter with 8.8 grains. That was 925 feet per second with a spread of 20 and a standard deviation of 7. This is a 2.1 inch group. My highest loading for these 255 grain semi and full wad cutters was 9 grains of Unique. This is the 9 grains with the semi wad cutter. Gave me 965 feet per second with a spread of 35 and a standard deviation of 12. And those 5 shots came out to a 1.6 inch group. And for the full wad cutter, it came out to a 2.7 inch group. If you just count these 4 shots, it's a 1.7 inch group. This was an average velocity of 956 with a spread of 29 and a standard deviation of 12. This last set of targets is this MP bullet, and it was loaded with anywhere from 7.5 up to 9.2 grains of Unique. This 5-shot group actually has 6 holes. This is 7.5 grains of Unique. That hole, I think, was from the load after it from the target to the side. So these 5 shots was a 1.9 inch group, 856 feet per second, spread of 64, and standard deviation of 24. The 8 grains of Unique with that bullet, I got a 3-shot group. That extra shot was from this one, which spread that out to about a 5.5 inch group, 910 feet per second with a spread of 29 and a standard deviation of 11. 8.2 grains was 911 feet per second with a spread of 38 and a standard deviation of 15. And these 4 shots is 1.7 inches, but there should be a 5th here somewhere. I'm guessing over on this edge. 8.4 grains of Unique gave 937 feet per second with a spread of 59 and a standard deviation of 21. This is a 2.4 inch group, but if you ignore that one, it comes down to 1.1. It acted like it wanted a group. 8.6 grains Unique was 954 feet per second with a spread of 68 and a standard deviation of 24 and a 4 inch group. 8.8 grains of Unique was 973 feet per second with a spread of 29, standard deviation of 12, and a 2.2 inch group. And finally, the last 2, 9 grains of Unique put me right at 1,003 feet per second with a spread of 46, a standard deviation of 15, and a 1.9 inch group, followed by the 9.2 grains of Unique with, for an average of 1,025, a spread of 62, a standard deviation of 23, and also a 1.9 inch group, although this one looks better than the previous 1.9 inch group. There are 3 shots in this hole and 2 shots here. So a few things that I noted during today's test. 4.5 grains of E3 and 6 grains of Unique were almost identical in velocity and only around 10 feet per second faster than the factory Winchester rounds. And they were all around 670 or 680 feet per second. Also, the bullet sized to .452, which included the factory 45 Colt and the Schofield, the Hornady FTX, the 4 cast bullets that were sized to .452 and powder coated, and then the semi-wad cutter from Thorzak 777, all averaged larger groups than the .457 bullets. The 452 bullets averaged an extreme spread of 71. The large MP bullet had an average of 49, and the full wad cutter had an average extreme spread of 31, and the large semi-wad cutter was 34. The .452 bullets averaged a standard deviation of 21, the large MP bullet 18, the full wad cutter 11, and the semi-wad cutter 12. The average 10-shot group size for the factory bullets, the 45 Colt and the 45 Schofield, was more than 4 inches. And for all of the .452 bullets, the average was 3.75 inches. The 5-shot averages brought that down to a 2.8 inch average. The large MP bullet average was 2.4 inches. The full wad cutter was 2.25, and the semi-wad cutter was 2.5. So, did the larger bullets help to shrink the group size? I believe so. The groups I shot the first time I took this revolver out were bigger than this, and I believe one of the things that helped was the spring upgrade. The lighter trigger probably shrunk these groups a bit, but looking at the smaller extreme spread, standard deviation, and group sizes from today's tests, I believe that the larger bullets did help as well. Again, here's the targets from the factory 45 Colt and Schofield, and if you compare, here's the target from the light load of E3. And this one. The 6 grains of Unique. The mid load with the full wad cutter. The high load with the semi wad cutter. And the 2 high loads with the MP bullet. There's no doubt that the hand loads with the larger bullets are helping. This may never be a perfect target gun, but shooting 1.5 to 2 inch groups at 10 yards will be plenty accurate enough for anything I'm going to want to do with this. I did get some leading in the barrel and the forcing cone, but with more than 200 rounds of different types and sizes of bullets, that did not surprise me. And I have no idea which bullets were the worst offenders. I think I'm going to use 8.5 grains of Unique as my standard loading with the semi and full wad cutters, which should give me around 915 or 920 feet per second out of this 4 3/4 inch barrel. And I'll probably look at again at the 9 grains for this 225 grain MP bullet, which should put it right around 1,000 feet per second. I do still have some testing to do in my Taurus Judge as well, and I hope to have that done soon. For anyone that may be interested in your own YouTuber target, I've uploaded the image to my Patreon site. I'll put a link in the video description. You don't have to be a Patreon supporter to see it. I've left access open to anyone that visits the page. Feel free to download and use it as you see fit. If anyone's interested, I believe I scored 22 thumbs ups and got 83 not suitable for all advertisers. Such is life. Well, until next time, thanks for watching, and God bless.